The billionaire's fiancé tore the maid's uniform. Then, she couldn't believe the scar that broke everyone's heart. But what happened next? No one in that room was ready for it. Stay with me, because this story is about to change everything you think you know. Welcome back to Fireside Files. The mansion went silent when Vanessa Cole grabbed Rosa's collar and ripped the fabric at her shoulder. Guests gasped. Champagne glasses froze in midair. Nobody expected an engagement party to end this way. Vanessa laughed, thinking she had just humiliated a maid in front of Greenwich's wealthiest families. But when the torn uniform fell away, a jagged scar across Rosa's collarbone caught the chandelier light. Daniel Hayes turned pale. His glass shook in his hand. He had seen that exact scar before, 11 years ago, in a hospital room he never let himself forget. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Keep watching, because it only gets more emotional from here. Rosa Martinez was 34 years old, and she had cleaned houses in Greenwich, Connecticut, for almost 10 years. She was quiet. She kept her head down. She hummed old church songs while she dusted the tall windows of the Hayes estate. 6 months earlier, Daniel Hayes had hired her through an agency, never asking many questions. Rosa was a widow, raising her son Miguel alone on a small income, and she never spoke about her past. She wore a thin gold locket under her collar, and she always kept her sleeves buttoned, even in summer. The other staff whispered that she seemed afraid of something. Daniel's 8-year-old daughter, Lily, adored her. Lily said Rosa's hands felt like grandma's used to. Nobody understood why Rosa flinched every time Vanessa Cole walked into the room. Vanessa Cole was 30 years old, beautiful and used to getting her way. From the day she moved into the Hayes estate, she treated Rosa like she was invisible, or worse. She snapped her fingers. She left messes on purpose. She corrected Rosa's English in front of guests, just to watch her shrink. Little Lily noticed everything. One evening, she saw Vanessa knock a vase off a shelf and blame Rosa for it, in front of Daniel. Rosa said nothing. She simply picked up the pieces with shaking hands. Lily tugged her father's sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, that's not fair." Daniel frowned, but he said nothing either. He was busy, distracted, planning the biggest party of his life. He had no idea that the woman mopping his marble floors was about to change everything he thought he knew about his own past. The night of the engagement party arrived, and Vanessa wanted it perfect. She wanted the Greenwich elite to see her as the next Mrs. Hayes. She gave Rosa a long list of impossible tasks and warned her, "One mistake, and you're gone." Halfway through the evening, a caterer bumped a tray and red wine splashed across the hem of Vanessa's white gown. Vanessa spun around and pointed straight at Rosa, though Rosa had been standing 10 feet away. "She did this on purpose," Vanessa announced to the room. Guests turned to stare. Daniel opened his mouth to defend Rosa, then hesitated, torn between his fiancée and his conscience. That hesitation would haunt him. Vanessa stepped closer, grabbed Rosa's collar, and yanked. The seam tore straight across her shoulder. And that was when the room went completely silent, because underneath the torn fabric was a scar nobody in that house had ever expected to see, a scar shaped like a crescent moon, exactly where surgeons cut to reach the bone marrow beneath the collarbone. Daniel's knees nearly gave out. 11 years earlier, before he built his fortune, Daniel had been a sick young man in a hospital bed, dying of leukemia, with doctors telling his mother to prepare for the worst. A stranger, an anonymous donor whose name the hospital never released, had matched his bone marrow and saved his life. Daniel had spent years afterward trying to find that donor, writing letters through the hospital, begging for a name, always told the same thing: she wished to remain anonymous. He had built a foundation in her honor. He had never stopped wondering about the stranger who gave him a second chance. Now, he stood in his own ballroom, staring at that same crescent scar on his housekeeper's shoulder, and his voice cracked as he whispered, "It's you. You're the one who saved my life." Rosa's smile disappeared. She looked around at the guests staring at her, at the torn uniform still in her hand, and for the first time, she looked afraid. Rosa's eyes filled with tears as she finally spoke the words she had hidden for 11 years. "I never wanted you to feel like you owed me anything." But Daniel was already moving toward her, and the room was about to learn the truth that would break every heart in it. If you've made it this far, you already know the story is different, so let's find out what happens next. Don't forget, you're watching Fireside Files. Daniel took Rosa's hands in front of everyone and asked why she never told him. Rosa's voice shook as she explained. She had been a young hospital volunteer back then, barely getting by, and after the surgery, medical debt from her own complications had swallowed everything she owned. She lost her apartment. She lost contact with the family she had quietly saved. Years later, desperate for work, she had taken a housekeeping job through an agency, never imagining it would lead her back to the very man whose life she had given part of herself to save. She kept quiet because she didn't want gratitude. She just wanted to survive and raise her son with dignity. Daniel turned to Vanessa, his voice steady now instead of shaking. "You tore the uniform off the woman who gave me 11 more years of life," he said. 11 years I used to build everything you've been enjoying." Vanessa stammered an apology, but Daniel shook his head slowly. He removed the engagement ring from her finger himself, gently but firmly, and said the engagement was over. Vanessa left the mansion that night in silence, and this time, nobody stopped her. What happened next was something none of the guests forgot. Daniel knelt down, not to Vanessa, but in front of Rosa, right there on the ballroom floor, and thanked her the way he had wanted to for 11 long years. Little Lily ran up and wrapped her arms around Rosa's waist, refusing to let go, whispering, "I knew you were special." Daniel insisted on paying off every debt Rosa had carried since that surgery, not as charity, but as a debt finally repaid. He gave her son Miguel a full college scholarship. And in the months that followed, Rosa never wore the housekeeper's uniform again. She became something the whole town noticed, a woman finally seen, finally thanked, finally home. Daniel and Lily started spending every Sunday at Rosa's small kitchen table, sharing meals that meant more to them than any ballroom ever had. The scar that Vanessa tried to use as a weapon of cruelty became, instead, the mark that brought a real family together. And sometimes the smallest kindness, hidden for 11 quiet years, is the very thing that saves us twice. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to Fireside Files, and share it with someone who still believes kindness can change the world. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below.